It is week 12 of the CFL season here on Two and Out. This is what we're going to cover on today's game. Andrew, our CFL expert over at WagerTalk, and our CFL insider Rob Braley return. We're going to talk about big spreads this weekend. There are some big ones. Are there any potential upsets? And there very well may be. We're going to do a State of the Union as far as looking at the teams, the standings in the East and the West. And of course, we're going to look at, they call it a dog game, but sometimes you get two bad teams and you get one pretty good result. And we'll see if we can give you guys some actionable info to get you some winning bets. And of course, Andrew McInnis at the end of the show will give us another winner on our extra point last week. Moneyline winner with the Montreal Alouettes. And Andrew, you're off a 3-0 weekend last week in the CFL, and I know you'll have a 5% play up this weekend. You've got a big one circled. How are things before we get to our insider?
Carm, great to be here. It was great seeing you in Las Vegas, and good to be back home as well. Off a great weekend in the CFL, as you mentioned. Now a 7-2 CFL run and a 12-5 5% CFL run. So feeling good going into this week. And I'll tell you what, guys, I really feel like once everyone starts talking about college football and the National Football League, this is the time you can make the most money betting the CFL. There's absolutely zero attention on this league right now. We will still be doing these shows every single week up until the Grey Cup. Looking forward to cashing tickets each and every week, Carm. So looking forward to being here and happy to cash another winner last week on the extra point.
Yeah, and just keep them coming. It took them a while, but they got there. And cashing bets in Vegas just seems that much more fun. But we're both back home. Your luggage isn't. That's a story for another day. And Rob Braley. Rob, I got to bring you in. On last week's show, you said it that the Edmonton Elks going to Hamilton, some different play calling that you said there's a good possibility the Elks get their first win. Not only did they get their first win, they did it in convincing fashion. I believe the final score was 24-10 in that one.
Hey, Carm, good to see you guys back from Las Vegas. I've sent both of you guys a pack of Gillette razors just to clean yourselves up a little bit and get back in the game here. The game was weather was definitely a factor in that one, and Edmonton was able to move the ball successfully by air and by ground, and they dominated the Tiger Cats. And Andrew and I were just chatting before the game, even with Edmonton's 1-9 record and Hamilton's got 3 wins. We both feel that Hamilton might be now the bottom feeder and the worst team in the CFL today.
It pains my heart to hear that as a Toronto Argonauts fan that the Hamilton Tiger Cats are suffering near the bottom of the standings. But I digress. With that said, Rob, you look at the games, and there's one pick 'em on the board. We'll get to inside the lines with Andrew a little later on, but we've got 3 spreads this week that are 8.5 points or higher. And you look at these, Rob, it's a big spread week. We can't get away from that. Which of these teams are likely, in your mind, to cover? Which lines you think could be overinflated and we'd possibly see an upset?
Yeah, last week we had some big road favorites, and the big road favorites like BC actually lost outright in the one game. So let's look at, first of all, Hamilton coming off that loss is traveling to BC, and BC is now, I believe, a 10-point favorite. Hamilton has 3 wins on the season. The combined total wins of their opponents is 4. They beat Ottawa twice. Ottawa has three wins. Edmonton has 1. These are the 2 worst teams in each respective division. They just got embarrassed at home, which we just talked about. They were held to 10 points. BC is coming off a road loss at Saskatchewan. Vernon Adams still threw for 455 yards in that road loss, and they still put up 29 points. BC coming off a loss. They beat Montreal by 16 and Calgary by 28. BC's also undefeated at home. They're 2-0 against the spread after a road loss. So in this particular game, I think BC takes care of business early. And I'm not hesitating to lay 6.5, I believe, maybe even 7 in the first half. Although I really don't think Hamilton has a backdoor possibility here. They're just not a very good team, and BC's a very, very difficult place to play. The next one I want to touch on is Calgary. I think that one's at 10 points now. I think Toronto's a 10-point favorite.
9.5 right now, I'm seeing.
9.5. Okay. Calgary, as Andrew mentioned last week, is probably a fade team going forward. Jake Maier last week, he was a very pedestrian, 24 completions for 190 yards. But more importantly, he's been 0 in the red zone for a couple games now. They missed a field goal at the end of that game to actually, they could have won the game with 7 field goals. They got 6 and came up a little bit short. Now we got Toronto off of bye week, put up 44 points on Ottawa recently. It's a revenge spot, losing to Calgary a few weeks ago for them. They beat Saskatchewan 31-13 a few weeks ago. I think Toronto has a huge advantage in this game. Chad Kelly, healthy, revenge spot, bye week. This one could be over early. The last game Toronto played against, was it Ottawa, I believe. They put up 28 points in the first half. I'm looking for something very, very similar in this game. I think Toronto's going to have no problem scoring in the first half. Probably an over first half, but I think Toronto points total is definitely going to go over here as well. Now, there's a reason I'm wearing the Montreal
before we get into
Yep,
that's the reason why you're wearing the Montreal. Before we get into the other Montreal game, which we're going to discuss in a second, I got to bring Andrew in on this this Calgary Toronto one, because Andrew loves to stir up controversy on Twitter and talks about the Toronto Argonauts defense, even though this team has only lost 1 game thus far this season. Andrew, give me your thoughts on this Calgary game.
Well, I looked back at the tape of what I said last week about the Calgary Stampeders. Here's the deal, guys. Their schedule is so tough moving forwards, but they're a team that I think for the past 3 years combined is at the bottom of the league in close games as far as the results. I mean, they're a team that takes a lot of games within field goals, touchdowns at the very worst. So they're a team that I expect to lose a lot down the stretch. But the question is, when we start getting point spreads like this on a week-to-week basis, how big of a spread is just too big? Because looking at the ATS numbers, Calgary hasn't been too bad of a team. They haven't been great straight up. And Jake Maier has made a lot of boneheaded mistakes in the fourth quarter that has hurt their record, especially in games they should win. But what kept me off this so far was looking at the bye week and the revenge factor, like Rob mentioned. But realistically, if you would have gave me this number at the start of the year, I would be clicking away as fast as I possibly could on Calgary. And now looking at what they did last week and even the week before, a lot of their games are really tight, Carm. So there's 3 big favorites and 1 pick, like you said this week. This is kind of one I have circled with a big question mark, saying that can Calgary hang around, or is it one of those ones where you do not want to fade a team off the bye week? But I'm telling you, as much as I'm kind of hating on Calgary as far as straight up is concerned, and my win total pick on them is not looking very good, they might be a good ATS team down the stretch. So we'll keep an eye on that. But once again, last week, they find themselves as decent-sized dogs. They cover, but don't win. So we'll see how it goes for them down the stretch.
That's Andrew McInnis, our CFL expert over at WagerTalk. And guys, if you agree or disagree with what you're hearing on today's show, number 1, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment on this video, and of course, hit the like button for the guys. We love to hear your comments, and we'll reply to them as much as we can throughout the week. So drop them in the comment section below. Andrew, I'm going to finish it off before I send it to Rob by saying that, and I know you love to poke fun at the defense, the point differentials, Argos, top of the league right now at 93 through 8 games. Winnipeg through 10 games at 89. So we'll see if the Argos D can step up this week in Calgary. Rob, finish it off with the Montreal and Winnipeg game, and then we'll move on to the next segment.
Yeah, no, sure, Mark. Winnipeg is a 8.5-point dog on the road. Sorry, 8.5 point favorite. Montreal's on the road here. Montreal has won their last 3 games. They beat Saskatchewan by 29. They beat Ottawa by 1 on the road, and they beat Hamilton by 13 on the road. Calgary played Winnipeg and could have won the game. It was 19-18, a very close finish. Winnipeg beat Edmonton by 9, I believe, and before that they crushed the Lions, and that was a really bad spot for BC. Collaros is back. Winnipeg has 1 extra day to prepare for this game. I don't think that's a big deal. I can see definitely Montreal keeping this game close. If Montreal can maintain a balanced attack and their defensive line with Sewell and Lemon and company can step up, I'm taking Montreal here to cover the 8.5, and this may be, and I'm going to say it, this may be the upset game of the week here. I think Winnipeg has stumbled down the last few games, and Montreal is starting to round into some pretty good form here. And I believe Fajardo will get the start, and so will Collaros. So I'm going to go with Montreal here to cover the
8.5. I want to jump in here.
Yeah,
I got to ask Rob a question because it's interesting to me. You always have to go back to your guy. It's kind of like you see in the NHL with the goaltenders when the backup goalie gets hot, but the starter, it gets healthy. They bring him back, Rob. But Caleb Evans hasn't looked too bad. He's been a guy that he's thrown together a big comeback last week, and now you're taking him out of the game. I get that that's what you have to do and bring back Fajardo, but are you worried the schedule has been a little bit just light for Montreal? To me, they've just played easy. They've beat teams they should beat, but now they're about to go through a little bit of a tougher schedule and bringing back Fajardo.
Yeah, I mean, Winnipeg's just coming off Calgary and Edmonton as well. Their schedule hasn't been that brutal. I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. The drop from Fajardo to Evans is not a big deal. They're almost equal, and I think they are the 2 most closest quarterbacks to each other. If you go, maybe BC might be better with Evans and Adams, but there's not much of a drop off there. So I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of change in the Montreal offense. I think they're still going to be able to run the ball. And I think they're going to be able to move the ball on Winnipeg. Winnipeg's defense, to me, is still suspect, in my opinion, and they give up points. So it's 8.5 points. That's a lot of points. But I know Winnipeg's been good at home, but I got to stick with Montreal here.
So Andrew and Rob, this question is for both of you guys because I want to look at the standings right now. And we've talked about the crossover. So for those who are unfamiliar over the way the crossover works as far as the playoffs go, with 4 teams in the East and 5 teams in the West, if at the end of the season, the 4th place team in the West has a better record, not tied, but a better record than the 3rd place team in the East, they cross over and will play in the divisional semifinals in that division. And you look at right now, 3rd in the East, Hamilton, 3-6, Ottawa at 3-7. You look at the 4th place team right now, Rob, in the West, and it's the Calgary Stampeders that we talked about, and they're at 3-7 right now. So that crossover is right in play right now, at least 12 weeks into this season, or heading into week 12 of this season. Give me an update on what you think the standings look like right now and how they could shake up in the weeks to come.
Anything can happen in the CFL. We know that, and there's so many variables. There's a lot of back-to-back games coming up where Calgary and Edmonton play each other twice. Hamilton's got Toronto 2 more times. There's a lot of things that can still shape up here. I think Saskatchewan is going to start to close the gap on the playoff spot. They still have an outside chance of a home playoff as well, but I mean, BC's schedule looks good. Winnipeg is going to be tough to catch. Believe it or not, Edmonton wins this week. If they win this week, they got Calgary twice, and they're not playing terrible football right now. And if they can sweep that Calgary series, they're all of a sudden right in the mix. Do I think they're going to be the crossover team? No, I highly doubt it. But anything can happen this CFL. It's just a crazy league, and things are just getting very more interesting, every week.
Andrew and Rob said it, in no league where you see a team 1-9 and think they're not out of the playoffs yet. But for those who are unfamiliar, we get what's called it's almost like the Alberta double. We get the Ontario double, where with Labor Day fast approaching, You get to see Calgary and Edmonton face off. You get to see Toronto and Hamilton face off. Give me your thoughts on these standings right now.
It's really interesting because it's very easy to say the league is top heavy as we sit. I mean, we know who the good teams are. We kind of have an idea who the medium teams are. And then there's really clear teams at the bottom. But with it only being a 9-team league, as Rob stated, some teams aren't out of it. And you talked about it as well, Carm. It's hard to believe this Edmonton Elks team could go on a run. And all of a sudden, they're finding themselves squeaking into a spot, that final spot, which would be honestly hilarious at this point. What would have happened if they put in Trey Ford earlier? We'll never know. But when I look at this team, it's either Calgary, Hamilton, Ottawa. You're trying to decide who's going to have that final spot there. And to be honest with you, at this point, I would probably put my money on Ottawa. As bad as their defense is, I'm not sure if I can give Calgary any more chances. Calgary's a team that I thought would be way better than some of the other teams, but they have not been able to get the job done down the stretch. A lot of it due to Jake Maier and also the defense putting them in tough spots. But realistically, Jake Maier is the only quarterback, the starting quarterback, that hasn't been injured this year. And quite frankly, that hasn't really benefited his team. As awful as that sounds to say, he hasn't been very consistent for his club. So I think it'd be very interesting if Ottawa squeaks in. Their defense has not been good at all, but they do have a chance. I do not think that I agree with Rob. I think Hamilton could go downhill over the next few weeks with what their schedule is presenting, Carm.
All right, Rob, I have one final question for you. And again, for you guys out there, agree or disagree, drop a comment in there. We always love to see the comments, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another Wager Talk show with a ton of actionable info. Rob, the battle of the basement, whatever we want to call it, the bottom dwellers, Ottawa and Edmonton. That game's a pick 'em. We talked about the three big spreads on this one. Any momentum from this Elks team going to Hamilton this past weekend, getting a win, and now playing the Redblacks?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some momentum there, Carm. Edmonton came off a nice road win at Hamilton. They held the Cats to 10 points. They played a decent game before that versus Winnipeg. They didn't win the game, but they were in the game. Edmonton will definitely have some momentum here. Ottawa, on the other hand, has been finding ways to lose games and lose them late. They've lost 2 to Hamilton. They blew the game against Montreal. They blew a win at Saskatchewan recently. And I think it's all on the defense. Like Andrew said, the offense has been fine. Now, Baron Miles is the defensive coordinator for Ottawa, and some of his late game play calling it's extremely suspect to me. They gave up a 51-yard play with 1:06 left in the game last week, and it cost them a touchdown to lose by 1. What he's been doing, and it's called a double cut defense. And it leaves your defensive halfbacks open to big play danger. So what it does is he sends the corners into the flats, and the corners don't go down the field to cover the back third. He leaves it for the halfbacks, and you got your best receivers against your halfbacks, not your best cover guys. And Mayaba caught that 51-yard play to pretty much polish off the game, and that was his only catch of the game. So these defensive calls to me are very, very questionable, and I'm afraid of them late in games, and I really think Edmonton can pull this one off.
All right, there you have it, Rob Braley. You can find him on Twitter at Rob_Braley, and of course Andrew McInnis at McInnis Picks to get some, and they're tweeting out some CFL stuff throughout the week, so it's always good to get that info. Andrew, I want to get into the inside the numbers, and we talked about it. You look at these spreads, and we talked about it last week. We had some high-scoring games. The numbers started to creep up. 2 of the 4 games go over the total. The Alouettes game, 49 points, 63 in the Lions Rough Riders game. A couple of games go under the total, but we see some high totals this week. What are you looking at when you look at these numbers this week?
Yeah, we've discussed the numbers pretty much mostly so far, but just to go over them again here, Bombers home favorites against Montreal, 8.5, total 47.5 here. Toronto home favorites -9.5, total 51. That is the highest total on the board. Then you have the next game, Hamilton and BC. We're seeing pretty much -10 across the board there for the home team, the BC Lions, total at 46. And then we talked about it bouncing around between Pick'em, -1, +1, Edmonton Elks, and the Ottawa Redblacks, total at 45 there. I'm not seeing as much movement in this game in this week so far, week 12. Of course, recording this show on a Wednesday. But as I stated before to you guys, this is the time to make money in the CFL when all the attention is on college football and NFL right now. Nobody's paying attention as much to CFL. I don't think the handle will be there nearly as much as it was, let's say, in week 3 or 4. But looking at the Winnipeg game, I think there's going to be a lot of movement on that one. Looking at Winnipeg really and what they've been doing all season long, it's been hard for people to understand if they're able to cover these big point spreads, if they can blow teams out by double digits, or if they can get backdoored like they have been a lot. I'm expecting to see money coming in on Montreal, the pick that Rob liked earlier in the show. I think we will see Montreal getting love. Montreal's been playing very well recently, finding ways to win. They had that big comeback last week. It wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. This is a team that is finding ways to get the job done. They're getting healthier. Special teams is looking good. So I'm expecting to see money coming in on the Alouettes. So if you want to bet the dog, I would bet that sooner than later. As far as the total is concerned, I'm looking towards the under in that one. And also kind of want to bring out the Toronto and Calgary one. Highest game on the board for the total at 51. I think it's high for a reason. If you want to bet the over in that one, though, I think you actually could get a better number at kickoff. I'm seeing some love coming in on the under, pushing that number down a little bit. So if you do like the over, wait till kickoff, wait till game day, get a better number on that over.
All right, like to hear it. Sitting at 51 currently, Andrew. Let's get into our extra point, Andrew. Last week, Montreal Alouettes, a money line. It gets there. They win by a point. It doesn't matter how it gets there. The money still spends the same. It doesn't matter what sport it is either. Give us another winner. I think we're on 2 or 3 in a row at the very least, as far as these extra point winners. So let's go for 4 here. What do you got?
Carm, when a team can't even score more than 10 points against the Edmonton Elks, they're in trouble. And that's the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And now they have to play on the road in BC after BC is coming off an outright and ATS loss. BC 6-0 in those situations, off an ATS and straight up loss. You add in on a 6-0 run at home against the spread. This is a situation that Hamilton does not want to find themselves in whatsoever. Rob touched on it earlier in the show. This was a BC team that, despite a loss, they still played very well offensively. Vernon Adams Jr., Lucky Whitehead, and company had a great performance. The defense will be able to look a lot sharper. And let's face it, any defense right now looks good against Hamilton's offense. I'm laying the points here, -10 here with the BC Lions at home. They will bounce back. Like I said, they're 6-0 last 6 times off an ATS loss and straight up loss. Let's take the Lions here at home in week 12, excuse me.
Week 12, Andrew can have 7-2 CFL run, 12-5 with 5% plays in the CFL. And I know he's going to have one up this weekend. So head over to WagerTalk, click on Andrew's page, and you'll find him there, our CFL expert. And you can find him on Twitter, of course, at Andrew McInnis Picks. Guys, again, if you agree or disagree on this BC Lions Hamilton game, drop a comment below. If you have any questions or things you want us to cover on next week's show, also drop a comment in there. We appreciate it. Hit that like button. And obviously subscribe to WagerTalk TV to get actionable info across all sports on our shows. Guys, for myself, Rob Braley, and Andrew McInnis, this is 2 and Out, Week 12. We'll see you next week.